Okay, let's kick things off with a real head-scratcher. What do you think is the single largest living thing on planet Earth? Now, if you're picturing a massive blue whale gliding through the ocean, or maybe a towering redwood tree in California, well, those are great guesses, but they're not quite right. The actual champion is a fungus. Yep, a single organism called Armillaria ostoiae, also known as the honey mushroom, is sprawling beneath the soil of a forest in Oregon, covering thousands of acres. It's mind-boggling, right? But how does anything get that huge? It all comes down to the one process we are going to dive deep into today: reproduction.
So, welcome everyone. Today we're exploring one of the most essential topics in all of biology. How do organisms reproduce? And as we'll see, this isn't just about creating more life. It is the ultimate strategy for survival. It's the master plan that ensures life continues from the tiniest microbe all the way up to that giant fungus. All right, so here's our game plan. We'll start with the absolute basics, the blueprint of life itself. Then we'll check out the two major strategies life uses: the art of copying, which is asexual reproduction, and the power of mixing it up, which is sexual reproduction. After that, we'll zoom in on our own story, human reproduction, and we'll wrap up by looking at how all this knowledge empowers us to make really important, informed choices.
So let's get right into it. Why is reproduction so incredibly important? I mean, why does life go to all this trouble? At its heart, it's all about passing on the instructions for life from one generation to the very next. Think of it like a grand biological relay race, where the baton being passed is the secret to existence itself.
Okay, here's the formal definition, but let's break it down. Simply put, reproduction is how a species keeps its story going. Now think about this. An individual animal, say a tiger, doesn't actually need to reproduce to stay alive, but for the entire species of tigers to survive and not vanish from the planet, they absolutely must reproduce. It's the engine that drives the continuity of all life on Earth.
So, if we zoom in way down to the molecular level, what is the single most important event in reproduction? It's making a copy of DNA. You've got to think of DNA as the ultimate blueprint, or the master computer code for a living thing. It holds all the instructions for building proteins, and those proteins then go on to build everything else, from the color of your eyes to the way your heart pumps. It dictates the entire body design of an organism.
But here's a fascinating twist. The copying process isn't always 100% perfect. Sometimes tiny little errors creep in. Now, you might think an error is a bad thing, but in biology, these little hiccups create something vital: variation. These are the small differences between individuals in a species. This variation isn't a flaw, it's the secret sauce for survival. When the environment changes, maybe a new disease appears, or the climate gets hotter, it's those random variations that might just allow some individuals to survive and reproduce while others can't. This right here is the very foundation of evolution.
So how do organisms actually pass on this DNA? Well, life has come up with two master strategies. On one hand, you have asexual reproduction. This is the path of the perfect copy, involving just one parent. On the other hand, you have sexual reproduction, which involves two parents and is all about mixing and matching genes to create that precious variation. We're going to start by exploring the art of copying.
Welcome to the world of asexual reproduction. You can think of this as biology's version of a copy and paste function. It's super fast, it's very efficient, and it only takes one parent to create offspring that are, for all intents and purposes, genetically identical clones. So let's take a quick tour through some of the amazing ways life does this.
First on our tour is fission. This is about as straightforward as it gets, and it's super common in single-celled organisms like this amoeba you see here. The process is beautifully simple. The parent cell just grows a bit, duplicates its DNA, and then it pinches in the middle and splits into two identical daughter cells. And just like that, one has become two.
Next up, we have budding. In creatures like this hydra, a small part of the parent's body starts to grow outwards, forming what we call a bud. This isn't just some random lump, it's a perfect miniature version of the parent, a little clone. Once it's developed enough, it just breaks away and starts life as a brand new, independent individual.
Now this next one is like something out of a sci-fi movie, regeneration. Take a look at this planaria, which is a type of flatworm. If you were to cut this little guy into several pieces, unbelievably, each and every piece has the power to regrow into a complete new worm. How is that possible? They're packed with special cells, kind of like master builder cells, that can turn into any body part needed to rebuild the whole organism. It's truly amazing.
I'm sure we've all seen this one, spore formation. It's a key strategy for fungi, like the common bread mold, rhizopus, that you see here. The fungus produces these structures that are filled with thousands upon thousands of tiny spores. These spores are basically little survival pods. They're encased in thick, protective walls that let them survive harsh conditions like heat, cold, or dryness. They just float around in the air, waiting to land on a nice damp surface. And when they do, a new mold colony begins.
And of course, we can't forget about the plants. Many are experts at asexual reproduction through a process called vegetative propagation. This means new plants can grow directly from the parts of a parent, like its roots, stems, or leaves. This bryophyllum leaf is a fantastic example. If you look closely at the edges, you can see tiny, perfectly formed plantlets, complete with little roots, just budding right off the leaf. Eventually, they'll drop to the ground and grow into new plants, all of them clones of the parent. Okay, so we've seen the world of clones. It's fast, efficient, but it has one big downside. Everyone is the same. So now, let's switch gears and explore the other master strategy, sexual reproduction. This method involves two parents and the fusion of special cells called gametes. And its biggest superpower, creating that all-important genetic variation, which is the key to surviving on a planet that's always changing.
In the world of flowering plants, the absolute star of the show is the flower. It's so much more than just something pretty to look at. It is a highly sophisticated piece of reproductive engineering. It contains the male parts, which we call the stamen, these produce pollen, and it contains the female parts, called the pistil or carpel, which holds the ovules or the future seeds.
So, how does this process actually lead to a seed? Well, you can think of it as a four-step journey. Step 1 is pollination. The pollen has to get from the anther to the stigma, maybe carried by the wind or a helpful bee. Step 2 is pollen tube growth. Once the pollen lands, it germinates and grows a tiny tube, tunneling all the way down to reach the ovary. Step 3 is the big moment, fertilization. The male genetic material travels down that tube and fuses with the female gamete inside the ovule. And finally, step 4, seed and fruit formation. That fertilized ovule develops into a seed, and the ovary that surrounds it swells up and becomes the fruit.
And this brings us, naturally, to a topic we can all relate to on a personal level, human reproduction. The fundamental principles are exactly the same, the fusion of gametes from two parents to create a unique new individual. But the structures and the processes involved are, of course, specific to us. So here we have the two distinct systems side by side. The male reproductive system, on the left, is essentially specialized for one main job, to produce and deliver the male gametes, which we call sperm. The female reproductive system, on the right, has a more complex dual role. It not only produces the female gamete, the egg or ovum, but it is also designed to be the place where that new life is nurtured and protected as it develops.
The critical event, the moment life begins, is fertilization. This is the fusion of a single male gamete, one sperm, with the female gamete, the ovum. In humans, this incredible event typically takes place in the fallopian tube. The result of this fusion is a single new cell called a zygote. This one cell is now diploid, which is a fancy way of saying it has a full set of genetic instructions, half contributed by the mother and half by the father.
But the journey is just beginning. After fertilization, that single cell, the zygote, starts dividing rapidly, becoming an embryo. It travels down the fallopian tube and into the uterus, where it needs to implant itself into the rich lining of the uterine wall. Once it's securely attached, an amazing new organ begins to form, the placenta. The placenta is an absolute lifeline. It connects the embryo to the mother's circulatory system, acting as a bridge to deliver oxygen and nutrients and to carry away waste products. You know, understanding all of this biology, from the way cells divide to the complexities of the human body, is incredibly powerful. It's not just about passing an exam. This knowledge allows us to shift from just knowing how reproduction works to understanding what we can do with that knowledge. It equips us to make responsible, healthy, and informed choices about our own lives.
A critical part of this is being aware of sexually transmitted diseases, or STDs. These are infections that can be passed from person to person through sexual contact. Examples include bacterial infections like gonorrhea and syphilis, and viral infections like HIV/AIDS. Protecting yourself is about being informed. Key preventative measures include using barrier methods like condoms and making conscious, responsible decisions about sexual partners.
And for those who wish to prevent an unwanted pregnancy, there are many different methods of contraception. These fall into a few main categories. You have barrier methods, like condoms, that physically stop sperm from reaching the egg. You have chemical methods, like oral pills, which typically use hormones to prevent an egg from being released. There are also intrauterine devices, or IUDs, which are placed in the uterus to prevent pregnancy. And finally, there are surgical methods, like vasectomy for males and tubectomy for females, which are considered permanent forms of contraception.
So, we have been on quite a journey today. We've gone from a simple amoeba splitting in two all the way to the intricate dance of human conception and development. But the most important thing I hope you take away from all this is that understanding our own biology is the first and most powerful step we can take to be in charge of our own health and our own futures. So the final question isn't just about what you've learned today, but a more personal one. What will you do with this knowledge?